I guess I'll start with amazing to hear that you're doing work in disability studies. And I feel like this is one of those long neglected axes of marginalization and oppression. And the amount of diversity within the disability community is often very unappreciated in scholarship, at least. It's certainly understood by those of us who are in it. Um, so I guess you probably have thought of this already, but just to give a first thought, who are you wanting to compare and why? So as you're thinking about collecting your own data, if you are exclusively collecting data among people who identify as disabled, then and you're planning to apply a MAIHDA analysis, you will be looking at variation and inequalities within that community, not necessarily versus somebody else, right? And that could be exactly what your purpose is, or you might want to rethink how are you doing your sampling. Definitely having a sort of rough draft of the likely ways that you would want to define your strata ideally. Shoot for the stars as much as your budget and your time allows, of course, which is always a constraint. But then having some fallback plans of how you can pivot and simplify if necessary. And that simplification might mean maybe MIDA isn't the right tool for this. So knowing that you're collecting data that can be used in multiple ways, that'll be really valuable. And then focusing in, I haven't heard enough about it to know, but know exactly what those questions are, why you're asking this thing. What is it that you're wanting to show or prove or disprove? Who or what are you fighting with, even if it's sort of metaphorical? Um, that can be really helpful in shaping data collection and how you're giving priority to different parts of what you're doing. Also, thank you for what you're doing.
Claire, also it's so wonderful that, like I've said, been quite candid as somebody who's never done MIDA will go to the grave not having done MIDA myself. But you and we speak so much of the same language, right? So you're talking about the importance of intersectional reflexivity, for example, being really clear. Why am I asking this question? What values? What are my intersectional positions? How does my training narrow what I can see or not see? And so that. But say, to answer your question about, which I think I understand about what does it mean to then take this framework that comes out of, mostly women of color, Black women, Indigenous women. I'm learning more about that. We have a salon coming down with Natalie Clark later in the year, talking about the indigenous roots of intersectionality for Native American women. But where I would direct you to is, and I put it in the chat, the Collins and Bilge Intersectionality Key Concepts book. Those six core themes, right? The role of power. Power is present everywhere. Social inequality, relationality, context. So the Croatian context, complexity, and social justice. And so that to me would be sort of good, for lack of a better term, sort of guardrails about whatever you're doing for your dissertation. How does it align with these core themes that I think are in many ways universal? Totally, you're in a totally different context, but so many of these core themes, if you follow those as your North Star, I think you'll be in really good shape.